Servus and welcome to La French Tech on Air, our European video podcast series on business and technology. In Europe, the 27 French tech community are working together to nurture this tech ecosystem and to support our startups to scale. My name is Karine Fouque. I'm the president of La French Tech Munich and I will be your host and moderator. Today, we are going to talk about growth and merger and acquisition as a go-to-market strategy in the startup ecosystem. We are now in the run for creating European champion among our scale-ups and unicorn with a clear objective in mind, to reach by 2030 10 decacorn or tech giant and 100 unicorn, including 25 green tech. And today, I'm thrilled to invite as a guest speaker and to welcome Maximilian Modl, the CEO of Sendinblue Germany since 2019 and the former co-founder of Newsletter to Go back in 2013. Hi Max, ich freue mich sehr auf unsere Podcast-Folge. Bist du bereit?
I'm ready. Thank you very much for having me, Karen.
Super. Los geht's. So if you want to scale in Europe, You have to be present in France and Germany. And to make the leap to cross the Rhine, usually after a significant fundraising. One way to achieve this goal and to acquire your main competitor in the local country with an M&A in order to gain quicker market share, to join force, to develop innovating new feature and to accelerate your growth into other international markets. So Flink, the German instant grocery startup, snapped up the French Cajou for $93 million in May 2022 this year. Malt acquired the German Comatch to become the biggest freelance marketplace in March 2022. And Koya joined Luco, the number one insurtech in Europe back in January. And exactly 2 years ago, the 31st January 2019, after raising 30 million in a Series A round, Sendinblue acquired his alter ego or doppelganger, Newsletter to Go, to build the digital marketing leader in Europe. So Max, why a merger and acquisition versus starting from scratch in order to penetrate the French market? Could you share with us, from your perspective of the acquired company, the objective, the scouting process, and the main steps of this operation till the official announcement?
Sure, I'm happy to share some details or information on that. So I think if you want to compete with the US, I think you have to be first very strong in the local market, and the local market is then France or Germany or maybe at a bigger scope, Europe. And at first place, Sendinblue tried to internationalize to Germany. And actually, Newsletter to Go tried the same. We also tried to internationalize from Germany to France, and we both did not succeed in a way that we were able to acquire significant market share in the other one's market. And back then, the European market was also very fragmented. So you have a lot of countries, and all the countries have a local champion mostly. And so that's why basically we decided to join forces with Sendinblue to really be able to create one big European player, one very strong European player. And so in August 2018, we basically started the process, and we got an LOI from Sendinblue. And then I think in December 2018, we signed, and soon also the closing followed. And that was basically it from a Newsletter to Go perspective. And from that moment on, we worked together with Sendinblue to really create a big European player. And I think now looking back 3 years after that almost, I think we can really say that we actually achieved that. I think today, in the SMB email marketing space, we are probably Europe's most important player. And we still have an exciting journey ahead of us.
Nice. And actually, so it's interesting. So you mentioned that this merger and acquisition come after as a second attempt after Sendinblue and Newsletter to Go try respectively to penetrate Germany and France. And just can you share with us, or do you understand now the reason of this failure of trying to penetrate the market from scratch, and share with us some of the lessons learned?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, we both were startups, right? And as a startup, you have limited resources, and you somehow by nature allocate the money where it's most profitable at. And where it's most profitable at is probably your home market, right? Because everything you've done is optimized for, I don't know, either France or Germany. And so this was also the case for Sendinblue and also for Newsletter to Go. We really were like very strong in our home market. And when we tried to internationalize, we of course made some effort, but we didn't really make the effort that probably it would have taken to do, and really, go abroad, open another office in this country, hire local people there, and not try to internationalize from Paris or Berlin and so on. So it's and that costs a lot of money, right? And if you are an entrepreneur and you have to decide, okay, what will I do, and am I really willing to pay for all the lessons that I have to learn? Or is it maybe even just better if I buy a company in this market that brings all this knowledge and so on? Then I think that the faster way is actually to really acquire a company in that space that has all this expertise, because you buy just so much more than just customers and the revenue. You buy the expertise, the lessons learned, the network in this market, and it takes years to build that.
And so basically, so the headquarters of Newsletter to Go at the time was based in Berlin, and
Yes.
then so after the announcement, it became like the headquarters of Sendinblue DACH.
Yeah.
So could you explain what looked like the first 100, or I would say 200 days in terms of integration from infrastructure perspective, cultural and technology?
Yeah, good question. Let me extend that range to 400 days. So the first, to be honest, the first 180 days, the first half year was very quiet. In the beginning, we thought we don't want to change things too fast, and just want to first, see how we scope with the new situation and so on. And then, but after half a year, we quickly decided that we think it's better to really do an integration and to really create out of those two products, two teams, and two brands as well, like one big thing. So take over the Sendinblue brand, take the best parts from the Newsletter to Go product, implement that to the Sendinblue product, plus making the Sendinblue product more compatible with the local German market. And then also, of course, integrate the Newsletter to Go team in new teams in Sendinblue. And we started that process, I think, in September 2019. We kicked it off, and we were kind of live in April 2020 and started to onboard the first German customers on the Sendinblue product and changed the branding from Newsletter to Go to Sendinblue. And it was quite a lot, I would say. And we involved the whole team in the planning. So we just basically communicated the North Star to have this ambitious goal to be ready in April to onboard new clients on the Sendinblue product in Germany. And then we gave the team all the responsibility to work on that and align themselves and build the project to get it done. And they did a really fantastic job. By then, we didn't build every feature from Newsletter to Go at Sendinblue, just really the most important ones and so on. But I think it was working quite well. And what made the integration particularly difficult is that in March 2020, the pandemic hit, which made traveling a bit harder. And but still we worked out quite well.
Yeah, for sure. Corona was not a good timing, but in a way you had 1.5 years to work on this integration. And we know that in merger and acquisition, this integration part is always quite challenging. And Can you share with us some of the key success factors of this integration? Maybe to have some practical tool. Did you request the support of external to manage this integration from an investment bank perspective or from a legal requirement? Do you have like any tools or any key success factor that you can share with us?
Yeah, sure. So at the very beginning at Newsletter2Go, when we started this process, we tried to do it ourselves, and it did not work very well. We then went with an M&A advisor, and that was actually much better and much more professional. So it worked much better. We also had legal support on the SPA for the ones who sell their company or are in a transaction for the first time. I highly recommend having some professional legal support that did exactly that a couple of times. SPA is a share purchase agreement. And also after the transition, after the deal, so during the integration, we had external support. We worked with a cultural coach that was specialized on the German and the French culture, and did some coaching on both sides to just, in the first place, just create awareness and understanding for the different cultures and so on, because the gap is bigger than expected. I mean, it's just across the river basically, but it's still like a different country with different habits and so on. And exactly that helped as well for the integration along the way.
Yeah, so this external support was key in order for you to develop this and to manage this integration. We Absolutely. May come back to you to ask for the contact of this cultural coach. There are more and more consolidation, there are more and more innovation, but there are also more and more similar solutions. And I think that we will see in the near future more and more consolidation. That's
totally
for sure.
Agree. Yeah.
And I have a question that I really, really want to ask, and I'm sure the audience would want to ask it. And it's regarding leadership in search, merger and acquisition. So for sure, you're an entrepreneur, you make a significant fundraising, and then you're ready to expand in a local country. And either you go from scratch and you recruit like a country director, DACH, and set up a team and so on, or you decided to go through a M&A acquisition, and therefore you exchange shares. And so how does it work? So you go from, being one or two founder from a company to becoming 4 founders. And who acquired who? How do you work together? How do you split the work?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, and that's also something that changed a lot after the merger and acquisition, after the merge with Sendinblue, basically. So technically, it was an acquisition by Sendinblue. So Sendinblue acquired 100% of the shares of Newsletter2Go, and basically the 2 founders, Christopher Steffen and me, as not a founding partner, but someone who came very early in the beginning and building up the companies. I had shares as well. We basically became shareholder from Sendinblue as well. But then we had like more like of a general manager role or CEO Germany role, where we have the ownership about the German market or some specific thing. But of course, we are not like the CEO of Sendinblue. That's still the founder of Sendinblue. And so our role changed as well, of course. And today it's a matrix organization. And that's also something different, something you have to get used to work with, but it's fine, basically. It works. Yeah.
It works well. For sure, it's down to, some company like Flixbus, as we know, have managed this process pretty well because they acquired quite a lot of company in their expansion, and they still always managed to remain the main founder. For sure, they were below the 5 million cap, and therefore there were no antitrust issue. But they were definitely like a good example to keep the lead on these things.
Absolutely, I think it's key to keep the founders on board somehow and keep them motivated and incentivized, because otherwise M&A can be really hard if like the founders are leaving, then it can be very difficult.
Well, it seems that it was working and a successful strategy for Sendinblue between France and Germany. And after raising another fundraising of 160 million in a Series B in 2020, Sendinblue recently announced the acquisition of 3 additional companies in the e-commerce area, Metrilo, Chatra, and Pushol. And they are part of Sendinblue long-term vision to expand their marketing capability and drive into the e-commerce space. And now with this acquisition, you are now in the process of conquering the US market. So my question is, when did you decide and why did you decide to penetrate the US market now? And is there a good time when the company reach a certain value or market share in Europe before deciding to make that jump?
At Sendinblue, I think we always had this this drive or this wish to go to the US because it's just the biggest market, right? I mean, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, so it was just a question of time. And I think after acquiring Newseller2Go, it was quite clear that we will become the European leader in our space. And of course, we will grow in Europe, but I think our base in Europe is quite solid and there's not too much to worry about, and we will keep on growing. But if we just want to think ahead and not only about the growth in the next 1 or 2 years, but the growth about in the next 3, 4, 5 years, then it was very clear that at some point we will have to go to the US to be able to grow even more. And to your second question, when is a good time? I think there is not like a rule of thumb that you can say, okay, when this happens, you can go to the US, either valuation or something else. I think it's mostly a question of strategy. For us, I think it was like, okay, first we are successful in Europe, and once that is checked, we can start to think about something else, because it's going to the US is, I think, even more expensive than going to Germany, because the US is very competitive, I think much more competitive than Germany. You have some, I think, natural disadvantages, or let's put it another way, as Europeans, we have a natural advantage in Europe because we are all kind of GDPR compliant, versus a US company. If we go to the US, this doesn't matter anymore. So I think the US is even more challenging than going to Germany, for instance.
Well, we wish you like a lot of success there.
Thank you.
So now with this new acquisition, Sendinblue has about now 500 employees, 2 additional offices in Bangalore and Sofia. And these 2 offices are in addition to Seattle, Paris, Berlin, Noida, and Toronto, correct?
Yeah, correct. But we are already 650 people. So.
Already, okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there is a plan to hire more talent.
Absolutely. So we hire basically everywhere, mostly, of course, in our cities, in the hubs, but also remotely. So if there's talent, we are very much looking forward to onboard new talents to help fuel the growth and help us with building this exciting with a vision of becoming more than just an email marketing software, but really a CRM. I think there's a lot of interesting journey ahead of us. And I think what's very interesting is that we really try to build a CRM that is affordable and much more affordable and accessible to also small businesses than the existing solutions on the market.
So in the growth phase, startups should also think and make sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are part of the strategy, and implement concrete commitments to significantly and sustainability advance gender equality in the French startup ecosystem, or the objective of the Pacte Parité that was launched on the 31st of May by La Mission French Tech. The first commitment of this pact are the following: to reach a minimum threshold of 25% of women in the board by 2025 and 40% by 2028. To train 100% of the manager on diversity issue and fight against discrimination and harassment by the end of this year. To ensure that 100% of the job description published by the company are open to both men and women. And last but not least, to set up specific support for each employee returning from parental leave, also by the end of 2022. Currently, this Pacte Parité brings together commitments that have already been signed by 69 companies, including more than half of the next 40, and the French Tech 20, including Sendinblue. So first of all, it's great that you're taking part of this Pacte Parité. It also, for me, feels very important to make this commitment in such a growth phase. Can you tell us a little bit more about the Sendinblue long-term plan on this topic, and how do you implement it in the DACH region?
I think it's a great thing to do, because it really manifests the diversity and equality. So I think it's really the right thing to do, and I think we are already on a pretty good track on that. So speaking for Sendinblue Global, I think we reached already the 20% women's on the board, so which is very good, and I'm also very positive that by 2028 we will reach the 40%. And as well for the anti-harassment training, by default, all the managers and team leads get a training at Sendinblue, and they have to do it within the first, I don't know, three months of the onboarding. So we implemented that as well. And so for DACH, actually, speaking for Sendinblue Germany, we have a lot of women leaders or women in leadership positions in the Berlin office, and they are doing a fantastic job, really all of them. So we exceeded, there are probably more women than men in leadership positions in Berlin. So we exceeded this already. Yeah.
And we heard that you recently announced the recruitment of Laure Rudel-Arnaud, who will be like Chief People and Impact Officer, with a mission of structuring talent management, developing the employee brand, and promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I guess this kind of a position, will be more and more key to any structure and organization of any startups.
Absolutely. Laura has a key position at this company, being the chief of people and impact. She leverages basically 650 people and making sure that everybody is not only productive, but also really, really happy and feels good. And so it's a very important position. And also the impact part is important for us to have a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion, of course, and become a real employer brand that employers also really love. And so she has a very exciting job.
Nice. We wish her all the success. And before we close this podcast, I wanted to ask you if you have any kind of like last word or last message you want to deliver to any entrepreneur going through a growth phase. But also, this podcast will be shared among all the French tech in Europe. And so maybe also to any other French tech who will listen to this podcast.
Can I have more than one message?
Absolutely. I've already given 2 audience, so please do.
Okay, thank you. So first of all, Sendinblue is still on the lookout to acquire more companies. So if you think that it could be a good fit between your company and Sendinblue, then please feel free to reach out to us. And second of all, I think fostering the European thought, it would be really good, and I would love to see that more, to have more M&A between France and Germany as well, because it's probably one of the most important European markets, to really create big European players that really are able to compete with the big players in the US. Because I had the feeling in the past like we were too busy fighting for our small fences in Europe than really taking the big step to the US. But I think that we can only achieve if we have strong European leaderships. And that's why I think the initiative from French Tech Munich and French Tech in general is a very good one to really join forces.
Okay, Max, we're definitely looking forward to seeing you in September at Blitz & Pretzel. Keep this date in mind, 25th to 27th, 2 days in the exhibition hall and 1 day at Oktoberfest. We will have a French corner of 600 square meters and a dedicated stage. We are welcoming our scale-up and unicorn as exhibitor. Just to give you a few names: Conto, Spandex, Malt, United, Mime, Play, and many more will be there. Well, whether we talked about growth or inclusion, Sendinblue is a very good example, and we really hope that the company to become one of our decacorn at some point. Definitely a European champion. Make sure you can count on the support of La French Tech and every capital in Europe, definitely Munich, but also in the US and all over the world to support you further. Thank you very much for sharing your journey, and stay tuned with La FrenchTechonAir. Servus!